Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the BFit Brothers podcast. Today we're going to be talking all about running, getting into it, injury prevention, all that good stuff. We're here with our good friend, Dr. Dani, who's a professional runner, physical therapist, badass runner, all the things combined, but we're going to let her introduce herself first.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you today. Vic is super kind. I wish I was a professional runner, but I did grow up in Miami. I ran Division I cross country track and field at FIU, so I stayed local. And I ran anywhere from the mile to the 10K on the track, so I was a lot of laps.
Wow.
And my biggest thing in college that I realized is when an athlete gets hurt, and it's still a problem now, they send you to a physical therapist, but a lot of these PTs, they don't know how to get you back to running. So the advice they give you is rest. And of course, the symptoms and pain goes away because you stop doing the activity that's aggravating things. And so I was constantly frustrated. I missed a year of running in college myself. And then when I graduated, I knew that I wanted to have a better system for runners. So really my big push for this year is to have runners come see me before they get injured and run them through a whole runner system, identify their strengths, their weaknesses, and what areas we can improve on to hopefully prevent injuries. So with that being said, yes, I'm a doctor physical therapist. I've been a running coach for over 10 years, and it's my ability to combine my passion for coaching and as a physical therapist to get runners back on the run.
I love it. Yeah. Doesn't it feel weird? Like, we went to elementary school together. So doesn't it feel weird to say you've done anything for 10 years? This is wild to say, right?
I was just going to say, one thing we missed in this intro is the fact that we've known each other for like 20 plus years.
You got to be 30 by now. We're literally like 30 because
that's true.
Time flies. But one thing that you just mentioned that I love before we get started is that you didn't see any clear path towards what you wanted, which is to continue running. And all these physical therapists, like you just told you to stop running. So you kind of made that lane and paved your own lane, which is, like you said earlier to us privately,
it's what entrepreneurship should be.
Exactly.
You spot a problem, you make the solution.
Exactly.
So what's one thing that you would advise to casual runners or someone who's looking to get into running? Like, what's the one thing that comes to mind?
Yeah, usually, especially with the running boom that we had post-COVID, everybody just started running, which makes sense. It's very it's accessible, but a lot of people aren't ready to actually tackle the demands of running. So if you've never ran before, or you didn't grow up playing sports, I would recommend just start with the walking program. Start with the walking program, get comfortable with that tolerance on your feet. And then if, gradually introduce running. What I mean by that is just start, 2 to 3 times a week on non-back-to-back days and just focus on running comfortable because people do too much, too hard, too soon, and then they end up getting hurt.
I completely agree. And I'm far from a running coach, but I've been in the fitness industry for a while. And one thing that I've noticed is that people do way too much when they're starting. And then they'll say, God, running sucks. I hate running. It's so hard. I'm not getting better at it. It's like, yeah, you're doing way too much. Like, your heart rate should not be at max for the entire time.
Like redlining.
Yeah, literally the entire time. And then it doesn't help the humidity and heat of South Florida. So
Riz personally attacking me? Is that why I'm in here? That's how I'm sitting in the middle. I hate you guys.
Or you're the exact example of I'm the person who tries to go too hard.
Yeah. And something that we were talking about earlier is that people tend to just jump in. Like, they say, oh, I need to start doing cardio, I need to lose weight. And they're like, the only thing they know is running or jogging. They're like, I'm going to just go for a jog. And it's like, you're nowhere near ready for that. Like you just said, it's very physically demanding.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to become a better runner in the least amount of time, what kind of program, what kind of protocol, or how should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And, a lot of the questions you're going to ask me will say, well, it depends, right? And what I mean by that is it depends on, like I mentioned, what did they do growing up? Did they play sports, or were they somebody that was more artistic and just like, didn't really play sports? And the reason being is again, what they did growing up as kids is going to give me an idea of how their body's going to handle, again, the demands of running. Mostly, how strong their bones are, their muscles, all their tissues. But to answer your question, the biggest thing I could say is like pick a goal race and then actually structure your training plan in like an 8 to 12 week block. And I always say, find a running coach, whether it's somebody, in person, remotely, or even a training plan, but you need to have some plan to get you there. Because if not, again, the misconception is, like we said, run a lot of days, run fast, run hard, and
just run.
Just run. So you need to have some direction and guidance to your plan.
God, so much to say. I love what you said about the running coach because I'm a big proponent in anything that you want to do in life. Just work with a professional. You're going to save yourself potentially years of, potential injuries or just like, hitting your head against the wall and hoping you learn that way. A coach is just going to give you the right guidance and you're going to have that peace of mind. And obviously we all coach for a living, so we're a little bit biased.
Oh, damn.
And then the other thing you mentioned that is super interesting is what they did as a child. I think that's so interesting. Can you elaborate on that? So does that mean that if you were more active as a child, you have like more resilient, like a structure? And
yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in general, the biggest thing is like as we're developing, if you grew up playing, like say like soccer, basketball, more impact sports, your bones are just going to be a little bit stronger. So unlike kids that didn't, when they grow up, their bones are a little bit more brittle. And then, so again, the most common one is like shin splints, which you can eventually become stress fractures and any sort of bone stress injury.
And we see that here too. You could tell right away, especially with athletic movements, who's done some sort of athletic endeavor in their life, especially like growing up, like you just said.
Exactly. And I mean, running is super repetitive. You're moving in one direction all the time. So if you grew up playing their sports, you're a little bit stronger because you're used to those multi-directional forces being tugging on the bones. So you're strengthening those bones from every direction.
Another good thing that you said there before we continue is that, and that's a good answer. What you said is a good answer to preface everything we're going to say, is that it depends. It's basically the answer you said. It depends is what we always say, is there's no absolutes. If somebody tells you an absolute, we always say like, that flying, might be anything that, run away from them properly. We always say there's no absolutes. Somebody tells you this is the best way to run, this is the best way to lose fat, this is the best way, like, no, everything we're going to say here is I think, take your, like...
I'm so glad you said that, because that was the other thing I wanted to rip on, is that it depends. Like, it's the mark of a professional. When you ask them a question and they'll tell you, well, let me ask you 10 questions.
Sir, exactly.
As opposed to, here's the number one way to start running.
Eat papayas.
One of my favorite questions here, people that say, I hate running, and you hear that quite often, what would you say to people that say that?
Don't do it. No, I totally kid. Next question. No, I think the biggest thing, and again, I've learned this the more I've matured as a runner myself, is like you have to find an internal like motivation versus an external factor to keep running, right? So simply what that means is like you can't always be looking to chase that new PR, that new time goal, because again, the faster you get, the harder those are going to become, the harder that's going to get to reach. So for me, it's like sometimes when I'm getting, back in shape, I'm like, I'm going to go do a long run, but that gives me a lot of personal satisfaction because like I woke up early, I knocked it out. So something that's a little bit deeper in you as opposed to something that's an external factor.
If I could give my 2 cents, I think the reason people say that is because of what we talked about earlier, which is they're doing too much. So it feels like hell and like they're dying. And because they're not working with a coach or they haven't started the proper way, it's almost like a negative feedback loop. Okay, I got myself to run. Wow, that really, really, really sucked.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that again. Therefore, I hate running.
It's like, to put it in perspective, like in our field, it's like if somebody has never worked out and they go and they jump into an advanced class, they're going to be super sore. They're probably going to throw up. All of these bad things are going to happen. You're going to be like, okay, working out is not for me, but that's not particularly the case. You just didn't do it properly.
Exactly.
For somebody that's untrained.
Exactly.
Which is why we always advise people to start slow and gradually increase. Like, give your body only the demands that it needs at the whatever level you're at, and then build upon that. But of course, we all want to get right into it. I want to start running 5Ks and, my pace. We struggle with pace. I don't know about you guys. My ego, when it comes to pace, like, I won't allow myself to run slower than like 10 minutes, 10-minute mile.
I was just telling her, like, if I see anything under 10, I am freaking out. I'm like, over 10. Yeah, like over 10, I'm like, hey, killing myself.
And mind you, for her, that's slow.
Yeah, and I told her, I'm trying to slow down. I start becoming like hoppy. I don't know how to do it. So that's why I think everybody, no matter what field you're in, needs to talk to a professional.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of like just my overall coaching philosophy is like, a lot of the runners, I have runners that are new runners that have never ran. I have runners that ran in college as well, But for those newer runners, I'm like, we're going to be super conservative. Like, we're going to start slow. Like, I almost want you to be a little bit bored when we're doing stuff. And then, because my goal is like, keep you in the sport for the long run, right? So like, luckily, with that mentality, I've had, new runners now for like 3-4 years. And yes, we can throw everything all at once and they're going to get really fast results. But again, they're probably going to end up hating it because it's just too much that they're not used to handling.
Yeah, it's like at what cost?
Exactly.
Given our field, which is obviously strength training, what kind of strength training exercises would you say are beneficial to running as opposed to some that aren't directly correlated?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I always say something is better than nothing. I think for most runners, and honestly, most people you guys see this, they just don't know where to start. So they think they have to do an hour routine to get some benefits. But again, same thing, right? Like, what's that person ecosystem? Do they have 20 minutes 2 times a week? Can they go to the gym and do a 45-minute class? But to answer that sort of question, a lot of runners tend to jump into like the HIIT classes, to kind of get started. And that's sometimes too much intensity all at once. Running is already a lot of intensity, especially if you're doing already like speed workouts. So sometimes it's a little bit overloading what they're doing. And then on the other coin is if you have more like boot camp style, it tends to be, lesser weight, more reps. So again, we're not going to get necessarily the stimulus that we want for running. But again, if that's a good entry point for them, then sure, go for it. But as a runner specifically, when I'm thinking, I mean, same thing like you guys, right? We're thinking like, push, pull, hinge, squat, and carries. I love carries. So just kind of picking in those buckets. Again, that's somebody introducing them. Someone that's a little bit more experienced, I definitely want to get them started on plyometrics, just to, again, that's going to help work with the running mechanics, cadence, or turnover, all that good stuff, and always core and all that.
Gotta have the core.
Yeah. So, when I program, I'm thinking usually someone comes in, because all the runners I coach, I'll also program their strength training. One, injury prevention, but for me, like, I lift because I want to run fast. Like, the stronger I am, the more my muscles are going to be able to produce the energy I need to get off the ground, be more efficient. But I'll do something that's, let's say we identified they have ankle mobility deficits. Okay, we're going to warm up with something like that. Then we'll do something simple plyometrics. It doesn't have to be crazy. My favorite are pogos. I love pogos. Very, low entry point for someone that doesn't have experience. Something maybe like a seated vertical jump or a squat jump. So it doesn't have to be complicated. And I like to keep them that for like a 4-week block. And once we reassess where that, progress them. And then, like a bilateral squat, it's something single leg, because again, running is single leg activity. And I love like marches. Like one of my mentors, Chris Johnson, he's a huge running PT, and he's an amazing triathlon. When I was working with him, he had me doing like 3 exercises, a super heavy loaded march. I was like shredded. It's like, wow. And we're talking about like 60 to 70% of your body weight divided in 2 hands. So you're working. Yeah. So you're working. So it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah. I love that. And you answered my question, because I was going to say why, because a lot of runners, from my experience, so most of the people listening here, they strength train and then they run like kind of as a supplement. But I know a lot of runners are a little bit resistant to strength training. Some might even say, why do I need that? Like, if I want to be a better runner, I'll just run more. But you kind of answered the question when you said like force production, and you want to be a faster runner, therefore I strength train. And of course, injury prevention. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
So you kind of answered my question.
And you also mentioned something that I think people neglect is like, people think running, I'm using my legs, I'm going to train legs, and they completely ignore the core area, not knowing all the force transfer and all the things that the core actually, the role it plays as you run. So I think that's a very important one that you mentioned in there too.
Yeah, you see near runners, and I mean, this happens to me when I'm super fatigued at the end of the race. It's like you're just like leaning forward because the core can't keep them upright, right? Like this is your base. Everything else is an attachment to this. So this has to be rock solid.
Yeah.
And then in that same vein, there's a misconception that people think, like he just said, that you don't want to strength train because it's going to make me heavier. People think, oh, I'm more muscular, I'm heavier, it's going to slow me down. So I'm glad that you mentioned that strength training actually helps with the force production and all that stuff, as opposed to hindering it.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys know this. If you're a distance runner, in order to get those hypertrophy changes, it's like you have to be lifting a lot. Yeah. Like you can't be doing as much cardio as we're doing.
Your body's not going to let you be muscular and you're running long distance to do.
So, with each step, you're asking your body to take about, 2 to 3 times your body weight and impact. So you want to make sure your muscles, your tendons, your joints are ready to handle that demand.
Which, going back to what we started the podcast with which is, if you're just starting, or let's say you're very overweight, you just said it, what is it, 3 to 4 times your body weight and impact? Like, think about if you're like obese.
That's crazy to just think about.
It's a lot of stress on your joints, and then coupled with the fact that maybe your joints aren't ready for that, or they're probably not ready for that, you can see how that could be potentially dangerous.
For sure.
So let's talk running form and technique. Is there an ideal technique, or is it a little bit more individualized?
Yeah, so there's this sort of phrase that they say a runner's form is another form of their fingerprint. And, if you've seen somebody running from a mile away, you can recognize them from just a running. Like, you don't even have to see their face. All that means is, like, running form is very individual to each person based on what tools they currently have. Is there characteristics of an efficient running form? Absolutely, right? So you imagine those, that sort of tall, upright posture, slightly forward lean, ideally landing more midfoot, really getting that foot cycling under your leg. So yes, there's characteristics, but everybody is going to be individual. And I think the biggest mistake people make is, like, especially for newer runners, they go see somebody and they're like, oh, you're missing knee flexion here and this and that. And then they try to make those changes. And then what happens is, they're going to start overloading other areas that might not be ready to handle that. So when I change someone's running form, it's very, very, very precise, like how we do it and gradual. And it's like, is it necessary at this point? Usually, what we'll do is we'll reinforce, again, their capacity, strengthen them. do running drills. And then over time, the more and more you start training, your form's going to naturally progress as well.
I love that. I feel like people are going to have to rewind because you went so fast. You're like, yeah, there's 4 or 5 things. They're like, wait, that was interesting to me.
Yeah, no, but it's so true. And especially like I like to compare things to, because obviously we do mostly strength training on the pod, but it's all based, like you said, on a per person basis based on your anatomy. It's like when somebody comes with a squat and they're trying to change their squat, and it's like your squat is not going to look like his squat because your femur might be longer or what have you. So I like that answer, that it's kind of like on a per person basis, and that you're not reinventing the wheel with somebody's run. If you come to me running a certain way, like you said, I'm going to adjust it to your body, to your mechanics, not it has to be this way. That'll like everything has to fall in line. So that's a good way to think about it. I like that.
And I mean, you look at some professional runners. I mean, the biggest thing people are told is they overpronate. You see some professional runners are excessively overpronating. You see some, you're not going to change that person. It's working for them. They're like Olympic caliber athletes. Don't touch their form, right?
Absolutely.
So
look at Tyreek Hill, the Dolphins receiver. He runs so weird. I'm going to say that. Also, one of the fastest guys in the NFL. So he's going to tell him not to run. Hey, you're running weird. It's like, all right, I'll see you at the finish line, loser.
Yeah, for sure. So let's switch the question then, in the sense that, is there anything that you shouldn't do that you should be careful with? Because, for example, we knew someone who would run on the balls of her feet, so no midfoot at all, almost like the heel, forget about it, never touched the floor, and it was like excessive. Like we would see, and it was jarring how much she was like on her toes.
Mind you, effective time wise and energy,
everything else was good. She was actually a pretty fast runner, but lo and behold, gets a foot injury. I don't remember the injury that she got.
Fracture, probably.
Yeah.
So is there anything that people should be cautious with when it comes to like, okay, you can run kind of your own way, but try not to do it this way?
Yeah, absolutely. And so typically majority of runners are going to be heel strikers. And again, they're like, oh, heel striking is bad for you. Not really. It's just, it's, if you heel strike midfoot or forefoot, it depends what structure is going to be involved in terms of injury, right? So it becomes heel striking because of a problem if you're landing like too far out in front of your body. So you're basically like putting braking force on the ground. So with every step, you're braking force, which is going to put more impact at your knee, right? So that's why most heel strikers tend to deal with like shin splints or knee injuries, right? If you land more on your forefoot, you tend to have more Achilles tendon injuries or gastroc, right? like pull strains. So if you the biggest one I would say is like you want to favor more a midfoot strike pattern, right?
Okay.
So like more midfoot, nice little knee flexion. But yeah, to answer that, it's like for her, did she grow up, for example, as a kid walking on her toes, right? And then that just naturally translates into her running form, right? But some people, they make the shift because they've been told, hey, forefoot is the most efficient. The faster you run, you naturally tend to go to more forefoot strike pattern. But then they pull their calf because they weren't ready to handle that amount of load, right?
Interesting.
So again, it really depends. The biggest change you want to look at is also someone's cadence. That has been shown, which is cadence is how many steps you take per minute. If you tend to be on the lower end, so like in the 150s, 160, you're just spending more time on the ground. So again, that's more forces going out through the chain. So you usually want to be in the, 170 and above.
Can we go a little deeper? I hope it's not too technical for the viewer, but can we go a little deeper into, from a physiological standpoint, like the springiness, right? Like I've always been taught like with plyometrics, you want to be as springy as possible. And the longer you're hanging out there, the less efficient it is, right? From an energy production standpoint. So why is it important to have like a cadence that's in line, as opposed to, that's one of the things that I see when I see people jogging the street that drives me kind of nuts. It's like they're really heavy footed, and I'm like, that I feel like you're doing a lot more work that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the biggest thing is, when you're thinking of running, your Achilles tendon is going to be what's going to store and release that energy, right? So literally think like a pogo stick, right? So the idea is the stronger your calf is, the stiffer your Achilles tendon is. If you think of a rubber band that's stiff, if you try to go to launch it, it's going to travel farther. The same idea with running, right? So that tendon is able to absorb more force. When you hit the ground, the quicker you get off, the more energy you're going to have to release. So again, if you're spending more time on the ground, you're dampening and losing some of that energy. So, and that's free energy. So that's like the biggest thing with like, one, I've strained my calf twice in the past. I've never stopped doing calf raises since. So, strengthening your calves, doing, like I said, pogos, increasing that ankle stiffness, that's all tendon bias. So that's going to help you become a little bit more efficient and get your cadence a little bit quicker as well.
Yeah, and just to go a little deeper into that, people, I feel like if you're not in the exercise field, you don't really know what a plyometric is. You think jumping is a plyometric. Right. And they don't realize when you're talking pogo sticks and all these drills that I'm not going to say amortization phase, but that's way too technical. But like the amount of time,
half for people.
the amount of time that you're spending on the ground matters, right? You want to be springy, and that's kind of what you're teaching. So I think, that's a really good point. If people don't, when you say free energy, people are like, what does that mean? And it's just like you're using that rubber band like potential energy that your body can do for a long time, as opposed to being heavy footed.
I realized I depend on that more when I'm fatigued, and that's because obviously I'm not a professional runner like you. So when I'm fatigued, I find myself depending on that springy energy rather than forcing my legs up and down.
Yeah.
It probably is good, but something I was thinking as you talked, in my ADHD brain was, for a layman, you see somebody running, you're like, it's running. It's like so simple, and you're talking about all these things. It's like, it's such much more complicated.
But I feel like she's simplifying.
She's simplifying, but I mean, like,
she's holding that.
Like, there's so many mechanics to it.
I follow a page on Instagram. It's like mechanics of running.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind how deep this person goes, because it's showing angles. And like you said, it can be a little much, but it just goes to show how much can go into it. If you really want to dive deep, you can dive.
Well, I'm a total nerd about this. Like, let's just keep this.
If you're not in the 0.1% or 1%, all those, like you said, all those little things start to mount. But if you're just starting, I think it's good from a basic point of view.
It's really back to okay. This next one is this is going to be interesting for everyone, myself included. But when it comes to pace and heart rate zones, how should we be thinking about that? And of course, the answer is it depends. But casual runners versus, let's say, someone who's a little bit more like, I want to run a 5K, 10K, or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's been a big shift to heart rate training, and it's great, but in Miami, it's hot and humid. So it's not as reliable, I would say, right? So I tend to bias more running based off effort, especially for newer runners. So I'll, 0 to 10, 0 easy, 10 is an all-out sprint. Most of your runs should be in that aerobic pace, right? So if I'm running next to you, we can have a nice conversation without, needing to catch your breath and all that.
Listen to that
again. On effort.
Like, rewind, listen to that again. You should have a casual conversation. You're going to go hard. I guarantee you.
You're not gonna do this. It's gonna be a one-sided conversation. I'm a really good listener, and
you're just gonna say a lot of yes.
You don't say.
Sorry to interrupt.
So we just anchor that, right? So, like I said, on RP, which is a rate of perceived exertion, 4 out of 10, we're thinking, okay, conversation pace. And if I want somebody to kick it up a notch, then I'm telling like 6 out of 10. So that's like comfortably hard. Maybe you can say 1 or 2 words within a sentence, right? And then, let's say we're going more, okay, now we're at the track, we're doing 400 repeats. Let's think more like a 7 out of 10 effort. Yeah. So, especially in Miami, if you're starting off, most of the runs, all of them should feel that comfortable pace because of the system you're trying to develop, which is your aerobic system, right? We're not worried yet about developing an anaerobic system or getting you faster. We just need you to tolerate running and build your endurance.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, because energy systems is a little bit, again, more complex of a thing, how low intensity you have to go to be in that aerobic, world. Whereas if I just start to stress myself a little bit, now you're moving to more anaerobic, like a little.
Yeah. That's something I didn't want to touch on, which I thought of it when we were talking about the strength training aspect of what exercise you would recommend, is the whole aerobic versus anaerobic aspect. But I think we're fine where we are without.
Yeah, but too deep into. So that's interesting. The heart rate, it's not something that even like running coaches are using as much.
Oh no, for sure they are. That's the thing. But I think it's great for elite professional athletes, especially or people that love data, right? But if you're starting out newer, just focus on the simple things. Just run.
Don't die.
I love your philosophy, because people, you don't know how many times like people get caught up with, I don't even know, Peter Attia and somebody like Huberman, these guys that are become very popular, and they're talking about spend 80% of your time in zone 2.
Exactly.
And then people be like, they ask me all the time, what is zone 2? How do I know I'm in zone 2? And I'm like, don't worry about that too much. I tell them the same as you. Like, here's how I want you to feel when you're doing it, but don't worry, like, oh my God, I'm not in zone 2. And I've been guilty of that myself, like, because the watch will tell you what zone you're in, which I'm sure is not very accurate. That's a whole nother conversation. But sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I'm in zone 4. Let me slow down.
Exactly. Back in zone 3. And then you can do it, but I was never. I would get a chest strap. Right? If you want to do it, get a chest strap. That way, that's going to be the most reliable as opposed to just a wrist.
Good little tip.
Yep,
for sure.
Awesome. And when it comes to pace, is that just like an individual thing? Should we not be thinking, like your mile pace or?
Yeah, so let's say, let's take maybe somebody that's been running for a little bit. Before we start a training block, we'll do a fitness test. Like I'm sure you guys do that as well for strength training. And typically I like to do a 2-mile test. It's a little bit more endurance based as opposed to a mile, which is going to be a little bit more, you got to have some more speed in you. And that's going to give me, an idea of what they're at. So let's say in 2 miles, I do it in, let's keep it simple, 14 minutes. There's a bunch of calculators online that you can plug in. One of my favorites is Jack Daniels. And you'll plug in, hey, this is
one of my favorites.
Jack Daniels, yeah. You plug it in the drain. And it'll spit out, the recommended training paces. But again, part of what I do is like I want to anchor that to, to teach the person. So yeah, I might put RP 4 out of 10 and then parentheses, stay within this range, because I also don't want them to be running too slow, right? So that's kind of how I like to anchor, but I want them to worry about pace when we're doing workouts. And again, this is talking about somebody that has a specific more target race in mind for an actual time goal, right? Someone starting out, I would still keep it based off effort, and you can anchor the pace if you want, but don't become so kind of obsessive about that.
And that makes perfect sense. Let's say somebody who's a casual runner and has a race in, let's say 2 months, and is running a 9:30 mile. That's I know it seems so easy, but that's what most of our people and they want to get to, let's say, 9 by that race. Like, what specifically do you think they should do? How would you go about it? And let's just keep it like super basic, like where they're not like really measuring too much.
Yeah, I mean, for that one, right, if they want to be able to run a 9-minute mile, then you kind of just break up the mile into smaller chunks and expose them to, let's say, 200-meter repeats at that pace. And then once that feels comfortable, 400-meter repeats, right?
Can you explain what that is for?
Yeah, absolutely. So typically...
Because I am literally in that boat you just got.
There's three type of main workouts they want to include in somebody's training plan. And again, this is, if it's somebody that has experience, I'll include all 3 of them. If it's someone that's newer, I'll probably do just 2 of them, right? It's very start slow. But you have essentially track repeats, which is going to be working on developing your VO2 max or your running economy. So that's how efficient you are using oxygen within a given minute, right? So your body's ability to deliver that oxygen to your muscles to use it. So let's say somebody, a track is 400 meters. So they want to run that mile in 9 minutes. You're talking about, that's per lap. What is that? 9 divided by 4. So we're talking about, we got to do math over here, like 125.
I'm the humorous guy here.
Yeah. So like what is it? That's like 2.
What do we swear?
Let's do 8-minute miles. So an 8-minute mile would be 2 minutes per lap, right? Okay. So a mile is 400 meters. So then they have to do it 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes to hit the mile. Okay. So I want them to get used to being able to feel that pace. So maybe instead of doing a whole mile at that pace, we'll do 200 meters. So that means in 200 meters, they need to do it at 1 minute. Get comfortable with that. And then I would start them with the volume of like, you're going to do 8 200-meter repeats, which would equal a mile, with them all warm up on cool down. Great. Maybe the next week we do, 4 400s at that pace and gradually get them
comfortable. How much are they resting in between?
Usually for it would be like a full recovery if it's something shorter. So like maybe like a 1-to-1 ratio. So if it takes them a minute, then a minute to 75 seconds rest. The longer the workouts get, so for example, let's say now we're doing 800-meter repeats, then I would give them, like if they were doing it at 4 minutes, and I would probably, which by the way, I wouldn't do because they're a little slower for that. But then I would probably give them like 3:30 to 4 minutes as well.
Got it. So about 1-to-1.
Yeah, about 1-to-1.
That's so interesting. I had no idea that that's how you would work on your pace, like run at that pace, but just for smaller increments.
Exactly.
I had no idea, and I've been breaking my head against the wall. Just trying to reach the pace, right? 2.53. Which is awesome because what she said about the running economy and the aerobic base, like you have to build that engine, so to speak. And like she said earlier, and if you do like a mile test, I can probably not impress you because you're used to like 5-minute miles. But I can deceive you, you know what I mean? I can do a mile in under 9 minutes. Now we do 2 miles.
And then you're tagging over a system.
We don't got to talk about the numbers, but it's not as impressive.
And then, my favorite type of runs are the tempo runs, which is, again, it's going to build your lactate threshold. So that's basically, that lactate acid. Yeah, exactly.
If it doesn't have lactic in it,
my favorite thing is when I'm dying with my absolute max. Yeah. What she's talking about is brutal, by the way.
So, that's you're trying to raise how much your body can handle lactic acid before it can't clear it anymore, right? So for somebody like that, we're starting probably run 2 minutes at that tempo pace, recover 1 minute, run 2 minutes, recover 1 minute. Make it very, give them some wins. I can't have them do longer workouts at that pace because they're not gonna come back.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can relate to that one.
Yeah. And then of course including long runs in your programming as well.
Let me tell my groomer I'm gonna be late. I don't mean like
Groomer?
Yeah, I mean like I'm being groomed. I mean like my dog groomer.
So let's talk running myths. What would you say is the biggest, if you had to pick one? I mean, you could say more than one, but biggest running myth you can think of?
Oh boy. I think, same thing that I was saying is like you have to run hard all the time, which is common knowledge that you don't have to do that, but it is mind-boggling that people still do that all the time.
I'm sorry. So there is such an ego thing. For me, I like you said, I blame the watch. I blame all these metrics because if I didn't have the watch, I wouldn't be able to know that I'm doing a bad job. You know what I mean? Like
You also don't run enough. That's what I tell people. Like you don't run nearly enough to deserve that kind of.
if I have to have the expectation, that's the thing with me. I'm like, I know I run malamente twice a week now, and that's now.
Yeah.
I wasn't before. I don't think like, oh, I should be running there.
You're not delusional. I'm not like you won't allow yourself. Cheer machismo.
Exactly.
Male, did you there? So
I feel like what I was gonna say is I feel like in every industry, in our industry is the same. Some things are so ingrained in people that it's very hard for you, no matter how much you say the message, they're just gonna keep doing it.
I mean, you also one is like running is bad for your knees. Like that's a huge one. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Oh, well, please feel free to riff on that because that's.
No, I mean, the whole idea is like, all that constant wear and tear and the impact that it's going to lead to osteoporosis. And when I listen, we're all probably going to get osteoporosis at some point, right? It's literally wear and tear of your bones.
Yeah.
Okay, we're aging. That's fine. It's going to happen. But yeah, no, running is actually, if done efficiently or whatnot, it's actually protective for your joints and your knees.
I think it's counterintuitive to think that stressing your body is going to hurt your body when in reality, stressing your body is going to make it more resilient.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think people don't differentiate positive stress with negative stress, and they kind of just see it all as one big bubble.
Stress.
I stress, we all stress. But really, another quick question on that. What would you say to somebody that already has the knee pain and is experiencing knee pain and they want to start running, but they can't because every time they do it hurts their knee? Would you tell them to start walking or?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, make sure their day-to-day, like going up and down stairs is fine. So once every day-to-day life is great, then I would recommend starting, flat walking, get up to an hour walking comfortable, add incline walking as well. Like I said, whether it's on the treadmill, stairs is a great way as well. Just get really tolerant to that. And then the other thing is like start with run walk. People think they've got to start balls to walls and do all out. Run 1 minute, walk 1 minute, whatever interval. And again, start non-consecutive days before you even try to go back-to-back days.
And at what point should they go and actually see a PT about their pain?
I honestly when it starts, so it doesn't turn into something. But the biggest thing is like once it starts interfering with like day-to-day life, right? Like they're struggling to pick up their kid, or like I said, getting in and out of the car, they're having trouble sleeping. That's usually definitely a time that you want to reach out to somebody. The problem is not just for runners, but for strength, people that do strength training or any athlete, most people tell them to rest and they take away that activity. And that's not the answer, right? We want to keep them moving. We just got to find that entry point back into the activity they want to do.
I'm so glad you said that. And it's a good time to give some advice that I always tell my clients, which is find yourself a practitioner who walks the walk and is familiar with your activity. What I mean by that is a lot of people like my primary care physician told me to just not do anything.
Now you do it again.
It's like, that is usually not the answer that, if they go to somebody like you probably wouldn't tell them, hey, don't do anything, just rest or rice,
Yeah. And rice is out.
It's that thing anymore. Yeah, that's just not, we don't need carbs. Yeah. But seriously, that's such a common misconception.
It's like, oh, the doctor told me not to do anything. The doctor is saying that like just because it's better safe than sorry. I'm not gonna go tell you to go deadlift when you have back pain, but I would tell you, yeah, let me see you deadlift. Yeah. We're gonna start with a kettlebell, and 9 times out of 10, it's gonna make your back pain better. But you need to go to a professional. So
it's just an old school methodology too. Like you'll find that usually with like older doctors, like you said, general practitioners, as opposed to somebody that's like in the field. Like not only you're a physical therapist, but you run and you're a running coach. So like I said, find somebody that is kind of aligned with what you want to do. And and if somebody tells you you'll never blank again, I would go talk to somebody else.
For sure. Yeah. Like I wish somebody would have given me that advice when I first got injured when I was in my mid-20s, because the first doctor I went to was a spinal cord, like a spine surgeon.
Yeah.
And he literally told me I was 25, personal trainer, athlete. I did all kinds of physical activity. And he told me, Don't lift heavy weights ever again. Don't play sports ever again. Don't ride a horse. Don't do anything.
He off a horse.
But that just goes to show that he was thinking like anything that even remotely puts stress on your body, don't do. And then I ended up luckily getting a second, third opinion, and those other doctors telling me the opposite. Like, no. Not only should you like not avoid weight, but like just so what's a horse. So I think that's just like a point that's very important to stress.
For sure.
All right, moving on to one of my favorite questions.
Oh, boys.
Running shoes. Let's talk about it. There's so much. So I went down this rabbit hole once and I was like, I walked out saying, I know less than before I went into the rabbit hole, because you have your barefoot runners, you have your like, the more cushion, the better. You have so many different types of shoes. So like, how do you think about running shoes?
Yeah. So it's funny. If you look, actually, I'm wearing a Nike Cortez. So
Classics.
Classic. These are
no way you're running those.
No, absolutely not. But these are the original like running shoes, right?
That's
like,
easy to think about.
Like you see, they have
them up for the
they have like no cushion, very heel to, they're flat, no heel to toe drop. So point being, if you look historically back, the shoe industry has been changing, obviously, like anything, for financial stuff, right? So they think, a research study comes out and they're like, more cushion is better for this. Everybody starts to transition that. The biggest thing now is carbon plate shoes, right? Which are fantastic, and they will give you that extra %, but really they only help if you're already at that higher level of running. Most recreational runners, I see them doing their regular runs or carbon plate shoes. What happens is they don't have the ankle stability or the single leg, strength to actually handle all that springiness. So they're just all over the place and they end up getting injured, right? So mostly I've seen tendon injuries because of that, because they don't have the control.
Yeah, people think it's like the movie Like Mike, that you put on the shoe and plus you're in like a door. Like, yeah, no, dude. Like,
exactly.
Run properly first.
I'm pretty old school. Like, you'll see my racing flats, or when I do track workouts, I'm doing it in trainers. I don't switch out. Like, I'm in my nice trainer, heavier shoe. I'll do maybe shorter stuff with like a racing flat, which is literally just.
What's a trainer for the layman?
A trainer's like your regular running shoes. So, like, example, what he has his
on. The crowd?
Ons. Yeah, he has his ons on. And then the racing flat would be, a shoe that's designed for speed. And then, of course, the carbon plate shoes. And they just make them so stacked tight. But the biggest thing that's been found with shoes is like rotating shoes. I think it was a research study like in 2013. If you rotate between different types of shoes, it's going to be injury preventative, mostly because each shoe stresses the body in a different way, right? So
you have different stimulus.
It's different stimulus every time.
So good advice for cheap people like me, that I wear out my shoe probably way more than I should. And
also, Andrew, your shoes are free.
No, what?
Romy gave you the shoes.
No, those aren't the only ones I use. I have another one.
My running shoes are free too, but it's like the Nike Pegasus or something.
Yo, my God.
I don't know.
I'm not a fan of them. They were free though. But again, each person, right? So I would say go to a running store and try a lot of different models. Try them on. And whatever fits comfortable, take them for a run. One thing I would say is a lot of shoes tend to be made very narrow. So I would take the insole out, stand on top of the insole, make sure your whole foot's encapsulated within the shoe. Because
I love ultras.
Yes, ultras are wide.
Yeah, the super wide. Because I'm a big minimalist shoe. You can't tell now, but I went through that whole phase of like Zevo barefoot, and it was just like super flat barefoot shoes. I even ran in barefoot shoes for a year. Let me tell you, humbling. It's so hard. I feel like I didn't get any better. What are your thoughts on that? And like, have you read Born to Run? And because I don't know if you guys know, but there was a whole movement of barefoot running. They came out with the little toe shoes, the Vibrams. So is there any, that's a hot debate. Like, you want more cushion or like no cushion at all?
More cushion for the pushing.
More cushion.
I
love that book, Born to Run. But same thing, right? People went boom all into it, and then what did you have? A lot of foot stress injuries or bone stress injuries, right? So same thing. If you want to transition to barefoot running, nothing wrong with that. But like anything, you have to do it super gradually. But the problem is most of our day-to-day shoes in general are made too narrow, made too cushiony. So that's where you're used to wearing. So that transition, unless you do it right, you're going to end up getting injured.
So it's like, it's not that it's bad for you. It's like you're not ready for it.
Aggressive.
It's aggressive. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, not in our country, but in other countries, they grew up running barefoot.
Yep.
They did all that. So they're more apt to those types of shoes, right? For us, when we're in the States, get a moderately cushioned shoe. Get something that fits well. There's a lot of proponents that are huge on the barefoot stuff. Again, nothing wrong with that. But even for me, I went through the same phase that you did. And ultimately, it's like, it kind of went back. So most of my running shoes tend to be more on the minimal end. But when I'm doing long run, I'm going to put something a little bit more cushiony. Because again, there is support behind behind all the changes that they're making to the shoes, right? Technology-wise. So if you have more cushiony, it's going to decrease some of the force. But again, you could do that naturally by fixing your running mechanics as well.
What about like the heel drop? Is there anything that you recommend?
So typically if you're dealing with like, let's say someone comes in to see me and they have like an Achilles tendon injury, I want them to be in a higher heel to toe drop because it's going to offload the tendon a little bit more, right?
Okay.
Same thing, somebody that's returning back from a stress fracture to the foot, have them a little bit more cushiony, so going to dampen the load. So it really depends on what injury you're dealing with. If you do tend to super overpronate, I have nothing.
What does pronating mean for the?
Yeah, we have our beautiful foot here. Thank you, Romy, for your foot.
This is Romy's actual foot. It was real foot.
So this is your big toe, right? So basically, we're looking at your arches. So when you're in this position, we're gonna try to do as best we can. You have a high arch, right? So that's called supination. So when you go to land, this bone's gonna shift forward, and you see how this kind of flattens. So the arch flattens. That's called pronation. So pronation is good. It's necessary. That's what's going to absorb the shock. When you go to push off when running, this big toe is going to pull on your plantar fascia, which is going to stiffen, and it's going to lift that arch again for push off, right? So essentially when you're running, you land in supination, so on that high arch, you pronate to absorb the shock, arch again to push off. So oftentimes a lot of people, they tend to overpronate, so they're a little bit more excessive. And when that happens sometimes, right, it's just going to put a little bit more stress on these areas, the bones or the tendons that wrap around here. Again, there's probably something else coming on from that, so we want to address it as opposed to just putting them in insoles in a more supportive shoe. But again, if you go to the running store, typically they're going to recommend on that. And it's not a bad thing temporarily, but I'm always going to try to figure out where it's actually stemming from. And then if we still need to use that tool temporarily, then go ahead and use that, right? But I'm biased towards putting people in neutral shoes.
And working on the mechanics.
Right, working on the mechanics. Exactly. Then, except they're just putting like a Band-Aid treatment to it.
Yeah, that's like the whole argument of, I'm sure with like podiatrists and stuff, there's also a debate of like barefoot versus, no, let's support. And I've always been more, I guess I'm biased to, I want to strengthen and get to the root of the problem and fix it, not let me brace you up. It's like the people that you see, they're going to work out and it's brace here, brace. Yeah. Figure out what the hell's wrong with you that I need all that tape, But again, I'm biased. I'm very like minimalistic. I want you to strengthen. Like if it was for me, everyone would work out barefoot.
Yep.
But running barefoot, not to mention running barefoot in the street is kind of dangerous.
Like,
whatever you're gonna
syringe.
All the syringes I'm running on, I hate it. I hate all the syringes. I run Hialeah. I can now run there.
We're staying on like chicken shit.
So obviously one of the things that people like to do when you see them like if they're warming up or they try something is stretching, the static stretches, grabbing the foot, pulling it up,
Grabbing the
following the Chris. Feel this?
The stretch.
Yeah. So what do you think about stretching before run? Is it overrated? Is it
fine? So static stretching is better for post run. The problem with doing it before the run, it has been shown that it decreases your muscle force production.
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
For static stretching, or something everybody knows, but it's just when you
do a stretch,
when you hold a stretch.
Exactly. So you're just doing that quad stretch, or you're holding it for 30 to 60
that you're
seconds.
probably doing.
Yeah.
They're doing the stretch and I'm like, oh shit, how'd you know?
Right. So the idea is like you're stretching that muscle, so in theory you're making it less stiff, so it's not gonna be able to store and release as much energy as it could, right? So we want to do dynamic drills instead, which is think more like marching drills, A skips, B skips. And honestly, if you're just going for a regular run, I do a 10-minute walk, like a brisk walk, but like you're like power walking, like you're moving,
So glad that validates my entire approach to it.
Because really what you're trying to do with the warm up is elevate your core temperature, elevate your heart rate, and you can do that just through like a nice walk. When I'm gonna go do track workouts or speed workouts, then I spend more time warming up. Exactly, I gotta run through my whole routine. But static stretching post run, knock yourself out again, right? I always tell people I have nothing wrong with stretching. Sorry, nothing against stretching. But if you're dealing with a tendon injury, temporarily we limit that just because it compresses the tendon along the bone a little bit more, right? So
that's interesting.
If you imagine your Achilles tendon that wraps around the heel, if you're doing this calf stretch, essentially what you're doing is you're just pressing it more. And then it continues irritating it. Unfortunately, you Google what should you do for Achilles tendonitis and it says stretch. What should you do for a T-band? Stretch, right? So again, it's just a temporary thing to avoid that friction that's going to continue irritating it.
Yeah, we have a big culture. There's a big culture like misconception. Like you just said, you have an injury, stretch it out.
Yeah.
And now you just mentioned that's great. Good to know.
Speaking of injuries, that's where we're headed next.
Yeah.
So most common injury, what would you say?
Definitely, depends on the age of the person, but if you're a newer runner, it tends to be that runner's knee, which is that patellofemoral pain syndrome, which essentially means you just have knee pain around or underneath the knee joint, right? That's the most common one that I see in newer runners.
We see a lot of shin splints. Shin splints are plantar fasciitis. Yeah. The fasciitis or fasciitis, because people say fasciitis. No, limited.
Listen, English is my second language, so fasciitis.
They both sound totally weird and wrong. So Worcestershire. Anyway,
I would agree. Those are definitely the big three. I just think IT band syndrome.
So. And what would you advise for? I know plantar fasciitis seems to be a tricky recovery, and it takes forever sometimes. So like, what's going on with it? What would you advise people to do?
Yeah. So first thing first is you want to make sure that it's a true plantar fasciitis, and typically what that means is, where's my foot model? This foot model is like super handy. So the plantar fascia, again, think about it. It goes from here and it expands. It's actually right here. This is it. So the hallmark sign is like when you take those first steps in the morning, you're gonna have pinpoint pain at that tubercle at the bottom, basically that bony part of the bottom of the heel, and then it takes a couple steps to kind of warm up. Same thing, most people will resort to rolling their foot on a frozen water bottle, stretching their plantar fascia, stretching their calves. That really doesn't solve the issue. For symptom relief, I would put heat, as often as you want throughout the day. Again, the plantar fascia has poor blood flow, which is why it's white. So you want to increase circulation to the area. And it becomes chronic because all day you're walking around. So anything inflammatory just kind of sits there, and it just sits there and it never gets a time to be flushed out. So that's the first part. We're thinking about like, okay, how can we get them day to day? Same thing, wearing more cushioning shoes. Maybe for a little bit, don't walk super barefoot if you're super irritated, right? One of the biggest things rehab-wise has been loaded calf raises. But what you want to do is there's like this tool called plantar fasciitis fighter. I don't know if you guys have seen it. But imagine like a little roll, and you're predisposing this toe to be an extension. So that's going to tug on the fascia. So then when you do that calf raise, you're putting more strain on that fascia. So it's like super slow, controlled heel raises. Like there's a protocol that includes that. And again, right, addressing what else is happening above the chain. If you're missing ankle range of motion, if your foot isn't able to pronate, you're going to be stressing one area of the plantar fascia more than the other. So it's not a super straightforward answer, but I will say don't roll on the frozen bottle. Use heat. You can gently roll the bottom with a lacrosse ball. Just don't sit on that irritating spot.
Okay.
And then go see a PT. That works with runners to get back to running.
And don't start running if you still have
so here's the thing where plantar fasciitis typically how it's going to present is you're going to have some pain, but the second you start running, it warms up. Now, if you've been dealing with this for a while, it doesn't ever warm up, right? So if somebody has come into me, unfortunately, typically is when they're been dealing with it for a little while, we'll temporarily remove running, but then we want to pretty quickly introduce it again because your body detrains from that stimulus. So then it makes it harder to come back to running.
Got it.
Which is the same idea with any running injury besides on bone.
It's funny you mentioned all this. I have a client who had plantar fasciitis, and all the PT told her to do was to get comfier shoes.
Yeah.
And I was like, we gotta eventually get to a point where you don't have to depend on it. You should be able to wear sandals, you should wear open-toed shoes, all these things comfortably. She's like, oh no, they just told me to like get these Brooks or Asics. I'm like, well,
no,
doesn't seem right.
No. And then sometimes there's like a neuro component to it, right? So you might have some sciatica that's actually mimicking those symptoms. So you got to make sure, is it a true plantar fasciitis or just
it's manifesting somewhere else?
Exactly.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is if anything's chronic, like just go see an actual expert, and you might need a second opinion sometimes, especially if they give you like that blanket answer of like, oh, just never run again, or buy these shoes. It's not for you. Yeah. Don't wear sandals. Like wear Hokas to the beach. All right, so transitioning more to kind of fun rapid fire questions.
Let's see what Julian finds fun.
Okay, so what do you remember the most about Vic in elementary school?
Oh my goodness.
Seminole, shout out.
Summer. Oh wow, No, I feel like he was always dressing up and like his dancing and singing, like he was always in costumes. I'm pretty sure I see a picture right here in glasses.
I'm Dade Omen. I was a showman.
And he played Santa Claus, which was like the skinniest Santa Claus you've ever seen. He was petite. You both were.
I heard it. No, but I still remember your guys' houses. Like I have the image of, and like, it was like a grassy area. The house was on the right. You walk in, there was a little mesita, the kitchen. I know.
I remember your birthday party that we were doing our NSYNC performance, singing and dancing.
Yes.
We knew the whole, one of these podcasts, we'll do it for you guys. We knew like the big concert, dance, singing. Yep, that's true. All of it before Deadpool.
The costume, that's hilarious. He did play Jose Marti too.
I was Jose Marti in every parade. Yeah, I was a showman. It makes sense now, right?
Still hard to some extent.
Right.
Yeah. Do you still get nervous before races?
Oh my God, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy. I've been running for over 20 years now, and it never changes. But that just tells me I still care, you know. I still have my rituals. I tie my shoes about 10 times at the start line, do my little prayer. Let's go. So yeah, I absolutely still get nervous.
Because that mess with, because I've found that for me in my limited like racing that I've done, like my heart rate is already like through the roof to start it. So that already affects like my heart rate zones as I'm running. Do you find that?
No, I actually don't. Once the gun goes off, it's just kind of like a switch.
You're in the zone.
And I'm in the zone.
Love it.
Yeah. And then, you know, again, the older I got in, the more I try to be smooth and controlled of my emotions. So if I win a race, I'm happy, I celebrate it. If I lose, you know, I reflect on it for like a day. But I don't let myself get too high or too low on the extremes. I try to be as even as I can be. And I think that's also why I've been able to be in this sport for so long.
And that's something I think that comes with age. I mean, obviously not everybody matures to that, but like our ego, we kind of learn to like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Like at some point you just stop caring so much. In the beginning, when you're younger, you want to either impress the other people around you, oh, no, quiero mal, whatever,
Exactly.
what have you. But now as you get older, you're like, you're doing it for yourself at the end of the day. So really, unless you're racing competitively, then really like whatever, who really cares? Which is something that for me is a big, because we've always been very competitive. But as you guys have noticed from this podcast, I'm not a very strong runner. So when I join a 5K or something, I'm like, damn, I'm getting beat by moms in strollers. And I'm just like, who cares? Like, they clearly do it more often than me. They deserve it more. So, like, it kind of comes, I think, with learning over time.
And you can still strive to get better without,
For sure,
like,
without
beating yourself up over, okay, I didn't, do as good as I wanted to or as last time. Or
I got beat by the mom with the stroller.
I'm
hung up on that.
Right.
Those moms are fast.
They are fast.
Yeah, and the stroller gives you an advantage forward momentum.
Between Strava and social media, there's just like everybody compares themselves to one another, all the run clubs and everything. And I'm like,
yo, I need to talk about that. What's the deal with the exchange and the
phenomenal run clubs?
That's some crazy. For me, you run about that.
I like running like on an intimate level. So I've never been the type to like, running is like for me, you know what I mean? Like I like running by myself.
Again, you're a recluse.
I am a recluse, and I have a very social job. So like when I'm by myself, I like to listen to music.
Exactly.
And just like, kind of go for a run without having to worry about all these people and the stimulus next to me.
My pace goes out the window as soon as I'm running with people. All of a sudden, I'm going to try to keep up. I want to be that guy. There's way that one's going to beat me. You're not going to get space. He's not beating me. So, talk about ego, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you think about this explosion? Because it's not just, there's a run club. It's like there's 200 people running in like our local.
Humongous, like my nightmare. Literally.
Even like the Miami Lakes is a small community, but their run club is huge.
It's
so like, what do you think that is? Is it just like a social media thing that's just like picking up steam?
Yeah, I think, same thing. It was the thing that was easily accessible after COVID, and that's really what kicked it off again. And I think it's great, right? Especially it gets people out there. There's a huge social component to it. But same thing like anything, right? Like the part that I don't like is that people think it becomes like an ego thing. Like, I got to be faster than this. And so I was running when running was boring. Like, they're like, why are you running? Like, I've been in this sport for so long enough. So sometimes I get frustrated when people that are newer, like they're so hard on themselves. I'm like, this should be fun. And, people start competing against each other. I'm like, this should be fun. There's nothing wrong with chasing competition or whatnot, but in a healthy way. And sometimes it's not so healthy.
Yeah, I love what you said. And that's something that we struggle with as fitness professionals all the time, where people ask us, should I be doing this? I started doing that. So some sort of new crazy workout. And it's like, there's two sides to it. On the one side, anything that gets you moving, great. Yeah. Anything that gets you running, fantastic. It was going to motivate you. On the other side, is there a more efficient way to train? That's how I'm always thinking. That's my lens that I looked, and it's like, yeah, there's probably more efficient ways to train than joining a run club and just trying to keep up with the person in front of you.
And then
it's the struggle.
So yours is efficiency and mine is, are you enjoying what you're doing? Because I mean, ultimately, you're not going to enjoy every physical activity, let's be honest, but you can find one. You found running. I like calisthenics. He likes to eat. No, Junior likes to strength train. So like everybody has their thing that you can find more enjoyable. So like it's about efficiency. And is it sustainable in the long run? And if you're not enjoying something, at least a little bit, whether it's because of the people you're doing it with or the activity itself is enjoyable, it's probably not going to be sustainable.
But I think that's one of the reasons why people love these run clubs, is because it's very social. After social creatures, and it's like I can imagine that the vibe is like, wow, a lot of energy.
The vibe,
So
also, let's be honest, it's Miami. There's some eye candy out there.
Yeah.
That's also
That's motivating.
Yeah. There you go.
Or you can just look.
Window
shop. So have you ever had a race that goes completely off the rails, like either physically or like mentally, you're just not there? And what happens in that scenario?
Yeah, I think for the most part, my biggest thing is like when to a line, I'm going to compete, I make no excuses. I'm going to give my best on that day. I will say one race that mentally I struggled with was a Boston Marathon 2018. I mean, the weather changed overnight and it was like 30 degrees, pouring rain the entire time. I didn't have the right gear because that wasn't supposed to be the conditions.
And you're from Miami.
And I'm from Miami, yeah. And so I was just miserable. And I remember being at mile 20 and like, I'm just going to quit. But, that little voice is like, once you walk off a race course, it's just so easy to do it again. But I really struggled mentally to just like push through that one. There was no fun that was had at the race besides finishing the race.
Pure suffering.
Pure suffering.
How'd you push through that? How did you do?
Yeah, so I to run Boston Marathon, you have to qualify, or you have to raise money for a charity. So I ran New York Marathon the year before. I got a qualifying time, but aside from that, I also decided to raise funds for the Children's Hospital in Boston. So I was paired with the little boy that was there, and he's really the reason why I was able to push through. I was like, I had met him the day before the hospital, and I knew he was watching, and so I was like, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can get through
I
it.
can get through it. And sorry to cut you off, but if the people don't know that running the Boston Marathon is a huge achievement.
It's like the people Olympics, yeah.
It's like I got chosen. You have to get chosen. So like that's a huge feat in and of itself. I feel like that plays a part too. And like I'm not gonna quit on I've been selected.
Yeah.
Like I'm part of the chosen few. I gotta like kind of just power through.
Yeah, and every year the qualifying time gets faster and faster, and even if you meet the qualifying time, you still have to usually be about 5 to 7 minutes under that to get in because more people are training, so there's just more people that are qualifying.
And I think that we haven't talked about this, but you just gave me an idea, and I think this is very important, which is running is so much more than like the physical, right? I feel like it's a lot more of a mental thing, and I think one of the biggest reasons to run is because you can really become a lot more resilient. Mm-hmm. You can push through those obstacles. You can feel more confident about yourself because, I mean, look at that. You felt like quitting. Everything was against you and you managed to do it.
Yeah.
That obviously translates to like regular life. So just a psychological, I find that with like runners, people that really love running, it's all psychological with them.
Yeah. 100.
It helps me tremendously to think of things like that. Like I'm always challenging myself in different ways. I don't know how you guys do it, but like I'm doing, since like you mentioned, run, walk. I try to limit the walk. So I'm like, I can't walk until this song is over. And then I'm like listening to like a really long song and I'm like, shit, I should have picked a shorter song. Like, but that, like you said, it's so mental for me that you kind of can push through these like physical limitations that you feel like you might have.
Absolutely. I think like anything that you're testing yourself physically, pushing your body, like you're just a step ahead of most people in this world, right? If I'm up at 5 a.m. running by 5:30, most people are still asleep. So that I already wake up with that extra layer of confidence of like, I can do hard things. And yeah, that translates over to life for sure.
Love it. What's something about competitive runners that would surprise most people?
I would say that most of the training is easy.
For you, whoever came.
Right, relatively. No, I think, like I said, it seems to be the common theme, right? Less is more sometimes. And so I run hard when I need to run hard. Granted, I am still, sometimes when I go to some run clubs and I'm excited, I can still get sucked into that. But for the most part, I try to keep most of my days easy. My hard days are hard with track, with strength training. So yeah, I think that's.
Do you follow Steve Magnus at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, he's like my go-to resource for running, and he says the same thing all the time. But again, I feel like it's something that you can say a million times. People are still gonna ignore you, which is most of your days should be easy days. Like what she just said, people don't realize like you don't feel like you're dying on every run. I think not at all.
Not at all.
And we feel the same way when it comes to strength training. That's all.
Well, you don't have to kill yourself every workout. Let's see some sort of gains.
It's like law of diminishing returns.
Exactly. If you don't mind me asking, what is your like pace for, like, say a 5K versus like a marathon? Like, what's your mile at? So just for reference.
Yeah. So currently, right now, let's say I did the Tour of the Gables and I did an 18:18 for the 5K. So I think that comes out to right under 6, like a 5:57 per mile. I am not running a marathon anytime soon, but when I did the half marathon in New York, I did a 1:23, and so that comes out to like 6:15 to 6:18 per mile.
I can't sprint that, Ebony.
Wow.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, it's funny because I see your pictures all the time, which are great, by the way. I love your pictures, but it's like you're mid-stride and your stride is like, wow, is she like in a full-on spray right now? Or
I'm like, hey, you're just like 5 feet tall.
I have long legs.
I'm like, good. So it's impressive. It is impressive.
For sure.
Let's conclude then, I guess, with a deeper question. If you had to retire from running today, what's the biggest takeaway that you would take and you could tell the people?
Yeah, I would say, running is delayed gratification. The beautiful thing about running is that it gives you what you put in terms of works, and it's going to reward you. The faster and faster you get, those rewarding moments tend to be a little bit more spread apart. So you really have to learn to sit in that, hey, I'm going to train hard and I might not get it this race. But the real win is that going through that training block, right? It's super cheesy, but that race is really celebrating the journey of just training. So it's really made me also apply that to life, right? Like I'm going to work hard, and I might not see the success immediately, but I just got to keep patient and trust the plan.
It's so true, because you can't bullshit your run.
No.
You really can't. Like, trust me, as a bullshitter, as a semi-professional bullshitter, you can't bullshit your run. It's humbling. You can't go out there like, oh, I'm going to do an 8-minute mile. Okay, no, you're not, because you haven't been putting in the work like you just said. So, like you said, your hard work translates directly to what you're getting out of it. So that's a very good point.
Which is, I would say, delayed gratification is the best skill you can learn, especially as a young person, to set you up for success in life, because anything worth having requires delayed gratification. And the irony is that we live in a world of instant gratification.
Right. And everything that comes to
and that's something that every time somebody new comes in, we have to let them know, hey, by the way, let me lay down the expectations. This is how long these things take. I need you to, you want to be a long-term thinking type of person, because strength training, running, all these things, they're not easy. The results don't come overnight. So if you can change that mindset and be one of those people that can delay gratification, like you can do hard things, you can open up a business, you can do a marathon, you can do so many things because you've learned that lesson. That's why I think that sports and physical activity are so powerful.
It's funny that it translates directly into your mindset, translates into what you get out of it. So we see the people that come in, I'm talking with the foot in my hand, the people that come in with that mindset of this is for life, or I'm going to take my time with it, usually end up seeing the most results, rather than, hey, I have a wedding in 2 months. What can I get out? How can I get there faster? So like you said, that delayed gratification is such a good,
or the I hate running people. Yeah, you hate running. You ran 3 times in the last 3 weeks and it sucked. Well, yeah, of course you hate running. Give it some time.
Consistency over time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to conclude. And we just wanted to thank you. I'm sure this is going to be one of our more interesting podcasts. I know I'm going to listen to it again. But I mean, I can't say enough nice things about you. You're really like an expert in your craft. You did a workshop here and it was amazing. Our people loved it. We should do that. I wish I could do a track. Track one. I want to do for myself. I want to do those.
A great professional, even better person.
You appreciate it.
Do you have anything to like plug? Anything you want to like?
Yeah, I think, I always tell people, and I think I said this at the workshop, once you know me or you become aware of me, if you ever have a question, just, send me a DM through Instagram at Dr. Dani from Miami, or
Dani.
Dani.
You can put it on the...
I put it there, yeah. Happy to hop on a call with you and point you in the right direction. I always tell people, and it might not be me, but I'm going to help find the person that suits you. So
love that.
I told you.
Better do her because she's the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's awesome.
So guys, thanks for tuning in to another special edition of the Be Fair Brothers Podcast.